Hey guys, Cow here, bringing you another video. This one is going to be on Magic the Gathering. I haven't been making too many Clash of Clans videos lately because I've been focusing on card games for a bit of time now. It's always been a part of my life, and I thought I would might maybe share this with the channel. This is going to be my favorite deck I'm running right now. It's 8.5 Tails, and we're using it as like a toolboxy equipment commander. This build will be budgetless. If it gets enough viewership, of course, we can look into budget options. But speaking of all the budget options, really extends the video. So I hope you guys do enjoy this deck tech, and if you want to see the changes I make to it over time, because this probably isn't going to be the final build, be sure to follow me on Moxfield. Um, and if you follow me there, you can see all the other decks I'm making. So, hope you guys do enjoy the video, and let's get started. This is budgetless again, so this one is about 14,000, but I have all the specialty versions of things, so let's get right into it. So, right off the bat, we have 8.5 Tails. What it does is it turns something white for 1 mana, spell or permanent. So, if someone's trying to lightning bolt your commander, you can pay 1 mana, make the lightning bolt white, and then for 2 mana, 1 white, 1 any, you can give a permanent, not just a creature, protection from white until end of turn. So let's just get right into it. It's about protecting your big pieces and keeping important pieces alive and kind of using your mana to protect and get like card advantage that way. So we do have a few planeswalkers here, but mostly they're for board wipes. This is for more casual pods, but this is definitely for a higher power, of course, because of the price range. So here we have Elspeth Sun's Champion. This is the art I like to use. Let's just switch it really quick to this so we can read it a bit better. So here we have 1/1s if we want to go wide, but mostly it's here for that board wipe. Coming down on 6 and blowing up everything, power 4 or greater. But because we make so much mana, sometimes you don't need the board wipe, so having that 1/1 counters or the 1/1s available is sometimes very nice. This would be probably something we cut in the future, but I have the fancy version, so I did want to use it in the deck. But this will probably be one of the first cards to go. The Wanderer, very similar to the Sun Champion, except it comes down, it can flicker something, which is great for us. We use artifacts for our mana sources, being able to flicker a rock to have mana open to activate our commander if needed is very powerful. And for the 0, we get a 2/2 with double strike. This is important because we have equipments, and getting that double strike in is another bonus to get double procs off our equipment. But the other big reason we're here is for the -4, being able to pick one creature on every board and board wipe the rest. We're very equipment heavy, so any creature that we pick will get really big immediately afterwards. Or if we have one really big creature with a bunch of equipment on it, being able to give everyone their worst creature and keep our best creature is very impactful, and only for 6 mana is very good. Ugin is our win con of the deck. Very similar, has a board wipe, can +2 to deal 3 damage, but the -X, we exile any colored permanent with that value or less, which combos with our 8.5 Tails, making all their lands white because it can make anything, any permanent white. And because lands have a convert mana cost of 0, we can -0 to blow up all lands we made white. Very big, impactful card here. You don't want to just drop it. You want to make sure that you have the mana available because it is 8 + 1 for every single land you plan to make white. So don't just drop it once you can. Make sure that you have the mana outlet to make a ton of mana, which is very easy to do in this deck. Moving on to the creatures, we have some good removal and draw in Aerial Extortionist, being able to hold swords very well in flying and having attack triggers is really great because we want to be attacking a lot. And anytime anyone casts anything, we draw a card, so another added bonus. Pulling a lot of weight is this card, a 4/3 flyer for 5 that interacts with our opponent's board while drawing us cards, an absolute all-star. Here we have some ramp, it's like eating your vegetables. Here, farmhand gets you a land, nothing much to say here. Archivist comes down on 2 with flash, can draw us a card. If you get one card off of this, it's worth it. You're wearing white, card draw is very difficult to get, Not as hard as it used to be, but definitely you want to be running this card, being able to flash it in. And it's a creature, holds swords, does a lot of heavy lifting for us. Here we have Arena Rector, being able to, if it dies, search out Ugin. We have no sack outlets in the deck. However, we find Sword of Fire and Ice very easily. Being able to ping it for 2, it only having 2 toughness is very important. It just dies. We search out Ugin or any of these other planeswalkers and get a huge burst of a big swing in the game that way. Cloudstone Kieran is here so we don't lose the game. We have a combo in here that will deck everyone, but if we have less cards in our deck than our opponents, we will die first. Cloudstone Kieran makes it so that we don't die. We don't lose the game, so we definitely win the game. It's also really funny with Stone Hero Giant, who I'll get to later. Emira Shepherd. This one I'm testing right now. This one might go, but I want a way to. We have no real easy way of getting things back that costs more than 3 mana, and Emir Shepherd can get us any permanent back. This is also, we swapped it out with a Shuffle Titan, being able to shuffle our permanents back and shuffle our graveyard if we lose important pieces. But I'm testing Amira because being able to drop her and get something back right away if we have a plains in hand feels strong, but it's definitely 7 mana, which isn't difficult to get. It also adds devotion, which is important to the deck. Kind of testing this one out right now, but it is a 4/4 flyer, holds swords very well, so it does serve purpose in defense and offense, as well as getting us things from the graveyard. So here we go, Esper Sentinel. Esper Sentinel, not much to say. Card draw. Giver of Runes can protect our creatures, and being able to protect our creature for just tapping a creature rather than paying 3 is very beneficial. Think of Giver of Runes as every activation saving you 3 mana. Very good in the deck, especially for 1. 1 is good. It has 2 toughness, which doesn't really matter, but it is also devotion. Serves a lot of purposes. Helps us also get in if, let's say, our opponent has a big board of green creatures. We can give our creature pro green, allowing it to get in for that damage without having to spend a lot of money to, or not money, a lot of mana to make that board white, which you can do with in Half Tails. If you want to get in with a creature, make something white, give it pro white, and you can get through. So this saves us a lot of mana. Think of it that way. So here we have more ramp. Not much to say about here. We have ways to go down on lands while maintaining a powerful board, and Knight allows us to ramp even after we've like semi-ramped, and we'll talk about that later, but just know we have ways to go down in lands, so this effect is actually pretty reliable. Lion Sash is a very good card. It is, what is it? Graveyard, exiling, graveyard interaction. A ton of decks have graveyards that are important to them. Being able to hit graveyards for 1 white is very good. And because you're always holding up mana with 8.5 tails, if it comes back to your turn and no one's tried to remove any of your stuff, you can just dump it all into Lion Sash, get 1/1 counters, equip it to your commander, and kill someone with commander damage. So not only is it interacting with graveyards, it's also becoming a threat, getting big, and because it is also an equipment, you can attach it in Half Tails and really come in with big commander damage hits out of nowhere. And if you even have like a double striker like this one here, we're hitting them twice and it just gets crazy really quick. Always a great card to have. Laurel Third Path, you want some interaction. Here we have destroy target artifact or enchantment. Very powerful. Ristic Studies, very powerful enchantments. You want to have answers to those, but not only does it have answers to those, it also draws you a card. And on top of that, not many people probably think about this, but it's very important in this deck. It has vigilance, so we can stack with swords and not have to have our shields down if we swing with this. And it can draw us a card after we swing. It does a lot of heavy lifting, and it interacts with our opponent's artifacts and enchantments while just sitting there. Great card. So we're going to keep that one in there for a while. Mother Runes, same as Giver of Runes, except Mother Runes can protect itself, so it's better than Giver Runes. In a lot of situations, there have been some times where Giver Runes is important because of the protection from colorless, but for the most part, Giver Runes is the one we like more than Giver Runes. But having that redundancy is very important because again, it's saving us mana, which is then through saving us mana goes into Lion Sash and other means of sinking. So That is why those are in there. Protector of the Crown is really great because it holds swords well, because it redirects all damage dealt to you to it, and if your opponent's creatures are all red and you have a Sword of Fire and Ice giving it pro red, you are no longer taking damage. So this one, when you see it, you're having a great time, but it's very difficult to tutor out, so it's one of those cards that is great if you see it, but you can't really expect it every game. And because it can hold swords so well, being able to kind of swing in and not have to worry about crackback is great. It protects that monarch that it brings in really well, making it so that you keep the monarch for the whole game, unless they go through a lot of hoops to kind of destroy this creature. And usually the only way to destroy it is with board wipe, especially if you have 8.5 tails on board. So great card, brings in the monarch, draws you cards, does a ton of things. Ranger Captain Vios, creature tutor. We want to tutor out our one drops, our mother runes, our Esper Sentinels. It does that great. You want to protect your when we're winning on our turn. We want to make sure that we can protect that. It's a 3/3 beater for 3, 2 devotion, which is great. Hold swords because it's a 3 power. All star as well. It's great when we flicker it with other swords that we can get, which is Hearth and Home. So anything with an ETB is great. Another reason why Lauren is so great. Recruit of the Guard is a tutor. Very similar reasons for Ranger Captain, except it can search for things toughness 2 or less, which is most creatures in this, besides like the big ones. But this is why it's a toolbox, because this card on its own can find you so many things in the deck. And it can find you, if you're against graveyard deck, the graveyard stuff. If you're against a go wide strategy, it can get you. um, well, we have other things to it. It can get you Stoneforge, which gets you resources, those equipments. So this is like running a second Stoneforge. It's a bit difficult to get to, or not difficult, but it does cost 3 and then 2, but it really isn't that big of a deal. You have another body, you have devotion, great card. Here we have more graveyard hate. Here we want to hate on those graveyards. This also is flying, so holds swords very well. If you've noticed the theme here, we do value those swords very highly, and they're one of the big reasons why we can push through this game. And a lot of the cards put in here, we have to keep the swords in mind. And because this is exile all creatures from target player by sacrificing it, it makes it so that we don't have to hold up mana. Again, it saves us mana, whereas like Lion's Ash, we have to spend mana to exile. This is free, so it's saving us mana. Saving us mana allows us to use it other places, so it's like another mana saver. Selfless Spirit, same reasons for the Cleric. 2/2 flyer, or 2/1 flyer, holds swords well. Sacrifice it, get protection. Another reason for wanting to keep that, because free is saving you mana, and when you're playing a card that's beating them with a sword every turn and they want to get rid of it, it doesn't matter. You just make your board invincible. And because it's 2 mana or less, we can get this back very easily a lot of the time. So you'll notice that things here are, at least the very important things are 3 or less. This Kieran being 3 or less is very important. Ranger Captain 3 or less, very important. And this is one of the reasons. Sarah Paragon, we can get our mana value 3 or less things from the graveyard. Just if they get used again, they're exiled and we lose 2 life. This ramps you if you have lands in the graveyard, which you do a lot of the time, and gets you your important pieces like Selfless Spirit, Recruiter, all these very important pieces back onto the battlefield for their cost, which they're 3 mana. So if you think about it, spending 7 mana gets you this and an important piece. So very powerful card. 2 devotion, which is great. Can't be tutored out, so that's unfortunate, but that's why we have redundancy in this type of effect. Skrelv is just another Mother of Runes. I won't go too much into it. It has Toxic. It's great. It is an artifact, which is important to keep in mind, though. So artifact important in this deck. Skyclave, removal. Removal's good. ETB, exile something 3 or less. It doesn't come back. They get a spirit, but you don't really care, especially with Ugin. That is removed at 0, so no big downside here. Solitude, removal, lifelink. You don't ever really cast this unless you have a really, like a blinker or something maybe, but holding on to this until the very last second, until you have to remove something, is usually the best use for this. Stoneforge gets us our equipment, so that's why we have it. It's the best one. If you do plan on making this deck and you want to kind of cut on budget, you can't cut this card. This card is too good. Cut in other places so that you have make room for the budget for this card because this is kind of the all-star of the deck. And it's suitable by recruiter. So like is this see why it's like this it's really hard to make this deck budget, but we can make budget decks in the future because the important pieces are just too expensive. Stone Hero Giant is another Stone Forge. This one is funny though because we can equip from the deck at 2 mana, and let's say our opponent's about to win, we can equip Cloudstone Kieran to it because this gets around reconfigure, and you can just equip right away, instant speed, don't lose the game. It's very funny. And you can like equip anything at instant speed. You can think of this as also protection. Someone trying to blast you with a red card gets Sword of Fire and Ice. If you don't already have it, you should probably already have it by the time Stone Hero hits the field, but you never know what type of hands you get. Great card. Has Vigilance, Hold Swords well. Devotion too, so great. Suntine is Sarah Paragon. It costs a bit more, but it brings out the thing for free. So this can get you, this would get you for 7 mana for 6. So comes down, has Vigilance, holds swords well, has an attack trigger, gets you something for free, is a 6/6 Vigilance beater, 2 Devotion. Exactly what we want in this deck. So yeah, there's no, and it's a cheap card. Suntitan is very budget, probably the powerhouse of most of your white decks, only $1. So uh, I'll switch that back eventually. Thalia Lancers, another tutor, very cheap tutor here. I wouldn't cut this card either. Gets you legendary, so gets you Ugin, gets you your draw, gets you mana. It gets you a lot of things in this deck, so a lot of things in this deck are legendary. And Thassa's will bring you anything you need. For 5 mana, gives you a first striker, which again, great for holding swords, 2 devotion. Not much more to be said on this. Get your stuff. Weathered Wayfarer, we go down lands, we search for stuff. This is just eat your vegetables, get your ramp going. We have a lot of board wipes because we have trouble with people getting wider than us. Usually, if it's like one big thing in a half-tails is very easily going to deal with that, but it's when we have a lot of little guys. And some games you're just not getting off to a good start, and yeah, you gotta wrath the board. We mostly wrath creatures because we have a high emphasis on equipment, and equipment don't get blasted, and a lot of our power comes from that. So any creature here that we lose gets any creature we play after the wipe, which we have very low CMCs, will easily get back to one of a very big threat after any of these board wipes, and we'll probably be able to rebuild faster than most people. So that's why we have Day Judgment. Open the army searches you an equipment or aura. Very good. Budget. Put it in if you're going to build a budget equipment deck. Search for Glory, same thing as Thalia's Lancers. We won't go too much into that. It gives all things, except it's a sorcery for less than a creature. Steel Shaper's Gift is a equipment tutor, not much to say there. We have 2 Wraths. Winds of Abandonment gets better the higher power your table is, because the higher your table power is, usually the less basic lands they have. CEDH All-Star, because usually people have no basic lands, so you wipe their board for 6 mana, and they get nothing for it. So that's why we like Winds of Abandonment. Wrath of God says same as Day of Judgment. Don't need to talk about that. Enlightened Tutor, same as Steel Shaper's Gift. It's just another tutor. This one gets you enchantments and artifacts, which are great. We have combo pieces, so if we have some of the combo, we can search out other pieces of the combo, but this is mostly just there to get you some swords. So a lot of redundancy, trying to get those swords out as soon as possible. Big part of the deck. That's why it's a equipment toolbox, because we focus on equipment. This is just eating your vegetables. We have 3 forms of removal at instant speed. This hits mostly anything. It's artifact, creature, enchantment, but these ones only hit creatures. We usually don't care about anything that isn't a creature. I've noticed when playing this deck, it's usually the creatures that get us. So having swords and path are really great. Teferi's protection, great. We're weak to board wipes, so having the best thing against board wipes is good. We're not very stacksy. If you've noticed with this white deck, you could say Lion Sash is stacks for the graveyard, but for the most part, we're not like Rule of Lawing people make so they can only play 1 spell per turn. Things that will make it prevent our opponents from playing the game. So losing our board and kind of phasing away is not as detrimental as if we had a stacks out board and then we leave and then give our opponent access to all their cards again. So Teferi's Protection, great card. Here we have some uniqueness, I guess. We don't run anything that taps for 1 except for Liquid Metal Torque, which we'll get to why we have that in the deck later. So, Basalt Monolith, tap for three, very good rate. It doesn't untap, that's fine. So Mana Rock. Chromatic Lantern, Chromatic Orrery, 7 mana, 5. 7 mana makes you 5, can pay 5, draw a card. It's just a big rock. We'll get into that later. Clock of Omen. This is why we have such big rocks. Clock of Omen is great because our equipment, which I guess we'll get to later, yeah, don't tap. So being able to tap those to untap big rocks allows us to make a ton of mana, and is the reason why we can get Ugin off so easily, because once Clock of Omen happens, we're usually making way too much mana. We have way too much mana to do anything with it, so we just pump into Ugin and win off there. Everflowing Chalice is a rock that can come down on 2 if you need to, but we can also just hold on to it, tap it for 4, tap it for 6, tap it for 8, tap it for 10, get a big rock that we can untap multiple times. But this is the most flexible rock, and I recommend you have a copy of this if you are uh, in any budget. This is more expensive, but I feel like it's a pretty cheap card. Expedition map, we have some very important lands that we want to get. Being able to search out those lands are very important. Guild Lotus, big rock, not much to say. Liquid Metal Torque, this used to be a mana crypt. I felt that mana crypt, unless you're playing CDH, can feel a bit polarizing, so we did cut it for Liquid Metal Torque. Why not for Arcane Signet or any other 2 mana rock? Other 2 mana rocks just kind of produce you a mana, which this does. So now we're looking at the upside. There's ones that give you infinite hand size. We don't really care about that. This one can turn a non-land permanent into an artifact, which combos with our Clock of Omens, our artifact untappers, and the funny one we can do is we can make our Stone Hero Giant um, an artifact and potentially tutor out many of our equipment at once, because we can now untap it for 1, tap it for 2, get an equipment, untap it. Uh, Especially with these untappers here, we can get kind of silly with it. And once we have a big rock, our mana rocks that tap for 1 aren't as impactful, because when you tap for like 5, tapping this and another thing, random thing, like if we tap our Guild Lotus and this Liquid Metal Torque, this would produce 4 mana, but if we tap them to untap Chromatic Orrery, we're netting 5. So once we get these really big rocks out, these ones kind of become things like things that will tap for 1 become a little bit more obsolete. Mana Vault is great, best card we have, or best rock we have, just because it ramps us to our closest to Mana Crypt. But Mana Vault feels a bit more fair, just because it doesn't untap. It feels more like a ritual, like Dark Ritual, which is fair magic for the most part, and but it does synergize a little bit because of the untapping. So we get to make it a little bit more broken than other decks might, but that's all part of the fun, I guess. But all these rocks you can kind of replace with budget rocks. It's just you don't get explosive turns, and it will make your Ugin feel a lot worse. So just keep that in mind if you are trying to build budget. Manifold Key untaps a artifact, mostly there to produce more mana. Mask Memory, great card draw. This is the equipment. We attack, draw cards, use it with Clock of Omen to untap something. Great combo here. Nyx Lotus, this is why we care a lot about devotion. More devotion we have, the more mana we get, and like let's just say we have 8.5 tails, because we're always gonna have 8.5 tails, so it always taps for at least 2, and just like any early game thing, so we have like a Giver Runes, and like any 2 creatures here is 4 mana, and that's not counting like if we have Smothering Tides on the field. So it gets to at least 4 very easily. Anything above 4, now we're like crazy above Chromatic Orrery, you know? So this one gets out of hand very quickly. And if you play, if you ever find yourself playing against this deck, I guess, or any mono color deck and this gets dropped, you kind of want to blow it up immediately, uh, just because it just produces so much mana. Scroll rack, again, we're in white. We are drawing a ton of, we're not drawing too many cards, so being able to see more cards for cheap is good. Even if we have a few cards, 1 mana to draw, even 1 card is very powerful. And because we have so many tutors, this will get kind of shuffled away, and you'll be able to see new cards a lot more often than you would think. Senseis is another kind of helps us with our drawing. But these are also cheap rocks that can clock a omen. And in a pinch, you can draw a card with Senseis, you know? Soul Ring is Soul Ring. Swiftfoot Boots over, what's it called? Lightning Greaves, because the hexproof is what's important here. With your Cloudstone and Line Sash, they will fall off if you give your creature Pro White, which means that if you do not have a way to give your commander hexproof, if the commander ever gets targeted and you have to protect it by giving it Pro White, you will have these fall off. And having the hexproof makes it so that your opponents can't target 8.5 tails if they want to deal with, let's say, Cloudstone Kieran so they can win the game. They have to target that now instead. And you can give this Pro White all you want, it won't fall off. So that's why the hexproof comes into play a lot better than if you were uh, giving it. Yeah, hexproof is better than Shroud because now they can kind of target. It allows us to target. It allows us to not get targeted by things. Um, and because 8.5 tails wants to target and Giver Runes needs to target, Skrull needs to target. When you have something that can now no longer be targeted, you can't protect it ever. It makes it so that a lot of other things can't get through, mostly when attacking. Because if I want to get through something and I need to give my creature pro something and it has Shroud, it means that now that creature is having a much harder time getting through, and we really need to connect to get value from our swords. So that's where the hexproof comes. I wanted to make Lightning Greaves work, but the Shroud was just a bit too overpowering, and we make so much mana the one equip isn't the end of the world. So now we get into the swords. Feast and Famine, great card. Untaps your lands. You want to be untapping your lands so that you can pump into 8.5 tails. Think of this as allowing your 8.5 tails to protect more things now. And it makes your opponent discard a card, but it's mostly there for the untap. Sword of Fire and Ice deals 2 damage, pings a lot of small things, a lot of important combo pieces to your opponent, a lot of value pieces, like their Esper Sentinels, their Ogmas, their Dorks. You know, this really, if you get it early, which the deck aims to do, it's over. You know, you can really just close out whoever is in the second place. You know, usually someone is breaking a little bit, and in a game where some people aren't doing as well, and there's someone very obviously in the lead next to you, you can really pick on them and make sure that they're not really doing anything. Because this doesn't have to hit the thing that if someone has a bunch of blockers, you can hit the person that doesn't have a ton of blockers and blow up the person that has the blockers stuff. So this gets value all the time. It draws you a card in white, so it's an all-star. Something you want to tutor out as soon as possible, almost in every game. Sword and Hearth and Home is ramp, which white doesn't do very well, but it also flickers, and because we have a lot of great ETBs, like Leonin and all that, being able to tutor this up when we do get those ATBs or need that ramp is very important. So these 3 swords are the big ones here. Temple Bell is in here. It's kind of group huggy, but it has a combo with Smothering Tithes and Clock. We can tap Temple Bell, having each of our opponents draw a card. Then that will create us 3 treasures, and we can tap 2 of the treasures to untap Temple Bell, and now we're tapping and essentially netting 1 untapped treasure every turn. And then we deck everyone out here. It also, I guess, combos a little bit with Smothering Tides, allowing you to ramp a bit. So it's not crazy, but it is here. It draws you cards, and because we can kind of control the board through removal quite easily, usually we're not too scared of drawing our opponent's cards. But of course, be careful with this card. Don't just slam it down. Draw everyone a bunch of cards. Make sure to tap it wisely at the end of your opponent's turn as you go into your turn, so you've essentially denied your opponent the card as long as possible. The One Ring, good card. We're going to try testing this out the next time we get to play this. This was Slate, which we'll go into considering here. These are all the cards I've considered. We won't go into it too much. Maybe I'll go into some notable ones, but Slate of Ancestry was there because we have a lot of creatures. this is just a direct upgrade, so that's why it is no longer there. But the One Ring comes down for 4, tap for 1, draw a card, which in white is a pretty okay rate on its own. We get protection from everything, which is great. But because we have so many ways to untap this, it's like put down for 4, tap, draw a card, untap it, tap it, draw 3. Now we've drawn 3 cards for 4 mana. And then if we can untap again, now we're drawing 3 cards. So now we've drawn 6 cards for 4 mana and 2 untaps. And then we only take 3 on our upkeep. So this is kind of balanced around the idea that you will only be tapping it once per turn cycle, but we will abuse that, and that's why this is one of the best draw spells for us now coming into whatever set this is. Lord of the Rings. It's a legendary artifact, which means that we can tutor it up. So very good card here. Um, yeah, that's a very good card. Hopefully it doesn't get too popular and the price stays down here. Thran Dynamo, Big Rock. Umezawa's Jitte, another version of Sword of Fire and Ice. This is like if Sword of Fire Ice was kind of like pumped up to the next level. Um, we like Sword of Fire and Ice because it also draws us a card, but if you really need to like control the board and remove things and you don't really need the card draw, I don't see why that would happen early game, but having Jitte really controls the board in that sense, makes your guy big, allows you to hit for really big numbers if something gets through, you need to close out the game. You can also gain life in a pinch, but we never really do that. Unwinding Clock untaps everything every turn, so now you're getting access to everything every turn, can protect everything. This is also an all-star. Don't want to skip out on this one. Vidalcan Orrery, we're holding up a ton of mana because mana equals protection. So if you can just draw, play your land, pass, you now have access to all your mana. You can protect everything, and if no one does anything to your board, flash and everything last second. Very powerful, and with Unwinding Clock allows us to kind of play out our hand. And as we draw more cards through Temple Bell, the One Ring, you can just play your turn every turn, and it gets a bit nutty with the Valknori. So Valknori, not a great card, but in this deck I think it's very important to have. Valknor, Voltaic Key just untaps things. Not much to be said here. Weatherlight is something I'm testing here, being able to kind of play this down for 4 legendary, able to search it out. This was what we're going to search out instead of the One Ring. But now that the One Ring is released, they'll probably box out Weatherlight. But Weatherlight is also very good. It's a 4 mana, 4/5 flyer. Crew 3 doesn't really matter because it's literally our commander who doesn't really want to attack unless it's you're going for a Voltron strategy. So he'll just sit there, and any other creature being able to hit 4, look at the top 5, and then bottom all that you don't need that aren't artifacts, and just being able to find your artifacts is very important in the deck. So we like Weatherlight, hold swords well. Oh no, you wouldn't put swords on this, my bad. It's 4/5 flyer. Not much you can say about that. Hits people. Smothering Tides, Smothering Tides. That's why it's in here. Draw a card, makes you. Not only does this produce you mana, it also combos with Clock because now you have artifacts to untap. So great card. It also synergizes with our commander because every mana you gain is more protection you potentially can have. So again, all these cards serve double duty, and that's why I really enjoy this deck. Very synergistic, I feel. So here are the lands. We'll go into them a little bit. Here we have Flagstone, so if we ever sacrifice something to our outpost or our... Oh wait, no, we can't sacrifice it. This is mostly here for Lotus Field, which we're trying to get most of the time. Lotus Field puts us down 2 lands, gets us a land that taps for 3, pretty much turning on our Weathered Wayfarer, turning on our Knight of the White Orchid, and it's very easy to find it. Um, Not the easiest things to find, but that's why we have Expedition Map and all these other ways to find it. I guess we only have Weathered Wayfarer, so, but if you do get it, it is good. That's why we're not running too many things that synergize much with it. This is great because now if we play a sword, it has first strike. But I guess in a hyper competitive world, if I want to make any edits, I guess this would be replaced with land tax, just because yeah, this land tax will essentially draw us cards. So maybe we cut that for land tax, but we do like being able to have a body that is 2 devotion and has upside. So I like this card. So I'll probably not do land tax, but it might be something to consider in the future build. Deserted Temple untaps things, like our Lotus Field, producing us even more mana. We like the untapping here. A Ganjo, you never do it, but sometimes. I've never done it in my whole life, so you never know. Legendary land. If I need to tutor out a legendary for some reason, maybe we need this for the attacking Winota, I guess, is a big 4 creature that we might want to use this against, but it's flexible, so that's why we have it. But if you our budget don't run this card, it's usually not worth it. Flagstone we just talked about. This is just card draw. Um, that's why we run these. Getting more card draw is always good, so that's why we run it. Outpost produces goes us gets us down to land, which is good. And then after we're down to land, we can also this comes into play untapped, so it doesn't really slow down our turn. It slows down our next turn, but it doesn't slow us down the turn it comes down. And being able to make 1/1s for blockers or whatever is sometimes nice, but it's mostly here to put us down to land while not having too much of a downside. Lotus Field's Lotus Field. This is card draw. Nykthos is Devotion. Devotion's good. We get a lot of lands. We get a lot of mana. Being able to untap it again with Deserted Temple gets us big mana turns. Plains is Plains. We need them. Scavenger Grounds is uh, Hate for the graveyards. This one might get cut because it exiles all cards from all graveyards, and our graveyard is quite important, but when it comes down to exiling your graveyard or losing the game, sometimes having that open is definitely worth it. Also, if you use Eco Down lands, turning on our lower land cards. Strip Mine can destroy the problematic lands. Let's say they have Nykthos, you want to be able to deal with it. You can also Strip Mine, go down the land to activate your things that need to activate when you have less lands. I haven't really Strip Mined anything because I haven't played anyone running like Gaia's Cradle or Nykthos yet, but I don't want to be caught with my pants down, you know? So there we go. Strip Mine, good card. Urza Saga gets you your untapper, makes you a Karnstruct, which is huge because you play so many artifacts, and it sacrifices itself, turning on your land matters effects. War Room I've never activated, and it probably should be cut, but it is card draw. So if you ever need to tap 3 to draw a card, it will feel like a blessing, so that's why we keep it. Boom. So that is the deck. Hope you guys did enjoy. The general game plan is to kind of just play your things on curve. You do want to aggressively mull for something. So let's just do some test hands really quick. So here we would not take this because even though it's a ton of lands, we don't have a turn 1 play. We do have a turn 2 play, and we have a turn 3 play. But but after we get our turn 3 play, now we have just Defense Protection Solitude. So we're not looking. This doesn't push our game plan forward. So we would mulligan here. Here it's 1 lander, so we mulligan here to 5. Or we mull to 6. So here we have a 1 lander. This would be great if it was a Mana Crypt, but here, now that we're at 6, we have to consider what we want here. We can bottom this card because this is a dead card and have a turn 2 and 3 play, have our commander come down, turn 4, have removal. So here we might want to consider this hand because now we can, if we were to bottom this, and were to play here, we would play 1 pass, play 2, go here, turn 3, we can play the Kieran, and then this Kieran will be like a lightning rod for removal because people don't want to lose the game. And then we also have removal, and because we have 1, 2, 3, 4 mana, we're 2 mana away from being able to rip this off, which we can probably play slow. So if we drew a card, we would have had Lotus and Elspeth, and this would have gotten us to 6, being able to board wipe and then go into our Elspeth here. So, pretty consistent there. It wasn't our best hand. I knew if I did a test it, it'd probably be like that, but you have to think about, can you play the first 3 or 4 turns, or at least the first 3 turns, and be proactive in your game plan, you want to make sure that you can when you're taking a hand with this deck, because there's so many like hands that you can just look at this and be like, oh yeah, if I draw a third land, you can't like bank on things. You want to make sure you're proactive. This one's actually not too bad because we have land reshape, Steel Shaper's Gift, to Mask of Memory, but we have nothing really after that. But hopefully we draw into land. But hope you guys enjoy the video. A little bit of rambling at the end, but everything here works super synergistically. I've had a lot of fun playing it, and whenever I lose a game with this, I there's always something I could have done to win. It feels like I've never lost because the deck is bad. It feels like I've lost because I didn't calculate something, or I tapped out when I probably shouldn't have, or I just put out something too early when I didn't need to, you know? So I feel like you learn the game very well with this deck. But like all decks, make sure you proxy it out first, give it a try before you buy your cards, because there's nothing worse than buying a Stoneforge Mystic for 50 bucks. Um, and then realizing that you don't like the deck, or you know, and now you could have papered it out for or printed it out for like a few dollars, and now you're down $50. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.